So Mujeres en Medio is like, the goal is for it to be a transnational media collective, and it's composed of like women of color, and the main goal is to do work collectively and to do collaboration and skill sharing, as well as expose the stories that are often overlooked by mainstream media or other outlets. So I guess that's our main goal.
And we feel that especially as women of color, we have access to certain spaces and knowledge of certain spaces that mainstream media journalists may not. And we also see Mujeres en Medio as a means of empowerment for women of color, all self-identified women of color, to become involved in media work, because there is a huge lack of that demographic in mainstream media.
So what broad themes do you guys cover within like each radio show that you guys do?
Well, the radio show is kind of apart. So Radio Libre is the radio show,
Okay.
and Mujeres en Medio is the online journal and the media collective. Radio Libre was started by two of the core members of Mujeres en Medio, and now like involves also Christina, who is in Mujeres en Medio. But that one is more like touching base on community voices and trying to expose whether it be events or things that are going on, issues that aren't being really covered as well, and also play music that is, again, overlooked. But that's Radio Libre, and that's kind of stands on its own. But yeah.
So with Radio Libre, like what kind of music do you guys play in terms of like, if we would go into specifics, and also like just like give me an example of like maybe one of the stories that you guys cover in the collective or...
Okay.
Well, I guess one of my favorites that we've done so far this semester was when we did a show with Lakiza, and she was the sister of Larry Jackson, who was killed by Austin Police Department last year during the summer. And so we interviewed her, and we talked about police brutality, and how it's been kind of an issue that hasn't really been touched upon like a lot in Austin, and again has been overlooked. And then for music, we played a lot of music, a lot of like hip hop and rap. Like it came from the underground, but also from concerns about like the community and police brutality, and so that's kind of like what we touched upon like that show.
Yeah, and along with that, like we kind of like, even though like I'm saying like Radio Libre is kind of independent of like Mujeres en Medio, it is kind of mixed because a lot of the members are in both. And with the interview that Christina just described, we're trying to also make it into an article. And we took video that day, so we have like the audio, the video, and then we are going to write something about what happened during that interview. So it's very much like interactive between both mediums. And then as far as like music goes, I mean, we play a lot of Latin-based stuff, but it really depends on the show. We've done like music from like Afro beats when we did a show about Afro beats and talked about Sun Ra and different like artists. And then we did one on like La Nueva Canción, which is a movement of songwriters and singers in Chile, and we kind of covered that. So it kind of depends on the show. So I feel like being very specific, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, you guys are great.
We also did a show on world hip hop, so we covered really
a lot of artists. It was like Anati Hugh. Who else did we play? Oh, we played some Palestinian artists.
Yeah, like there's like so much Palestinian hip hop, like Shaya Mansour. I'm like blanking right now, but we played like some Egyptian revolutionary like hip hop. Like there's so much out there.
Boca Floja from like Mexico.
Yeah.
So what drew you to like the artistic media of your choice, like in being either the journal or the radio, or specifically the journal, or and how and when did you decide that it had to have an activist narrative to it?
I feel like I started off more like, well, growing up personally, I always liked photography. I felt like I always would, my mom would buy me like disposable cameras, and like it would be kind of the medium that I chose initially. That's what I thought, like going into college, I was like, I'm going to do photography. it wasn't until later through organizing that I got introduced to radio as a form of activism, and that's when we started Radio Libre. And then from there, it was like we sat down and then we started Mujeres en Medio and talking about journalism. So for me personally, it was like an evolution of working with different mediums, like be audio, video, and photography and writing, because I feel like the more, and we were talking about this earlier, like the more accessible you are through different mediums is greater. And then as far as like why have an activist role, I just feel like I've always been into like social justice, that I feel like it wouldn't be me if it didn't also have that context behind it.
Yeah. I think like for me, instead of photography, I feel like I've been more drawn to literature, and so like growing up I read a lot of fiction, and then before going to college I decided to become a journalism major. And now I've kind of seen writing in a different way. Like in Mujeres en Medio, a lot of the writing has been either very journalistic, but we've also written a lot of crónicas, and I feel like I've been drawn more to crónicas and people.
Can you explain what that is?
Crónicas is pretty much, I mean, it's kind of, it's pretty much like reporting on what you see and including yourself in these narratives.
Very subjective.
It's
in the
very
way of,
subjective,
of
yeah.
like writing, but it's like you still are stating facts, but in a way that you as the journalist and as the writer are like also instilling your thoughts and emotions into the story. So in that sense, we felt that it was like more effective to write that way.
Yeah, and so it's like I think I came to the realization that it's important to include ourselves because we are women of color and because our narratives haven't really been told in, I mean, mainstream media, but also in movies or in literature, you know, like that's not what we are brought up in during our elementary to like high school years. So it's also it's important to introduce our own narratives, and I think that's why it's important to be able to like mix literature and political activism. And then, you know, as a journalism major, they really pushed us to learn video and photography, and now I've, you know, tried to do everything and incorporate political activism into everything I do.
Seems like you mastered them all.
Not really.
Working on it.
Talking about that.
Yeah, and we met like through organizing, so
Yeah.
it just kind of plays like, you know, when we went, it wasn't like, hey, let's do media work. It was like, hey, let's do organizing.
Yeah.
And then we realized, okay, well, like, it seems like organizing, and we were talking about this earlier too, you know, it's a role that's important, but maybe not our role, and maybe we should play the media role because that's what we're attracted to. And she
Yeah.
was talking about writing, I like photography.
Yeah, exactly.
And kind of, again, linking those two together, where she could write an article, I could take the photos, or, you know, etc.
And I think it's so important that we come from a background of organizing because, first of all, you have, like, at least, like, the basic knowledge about a lot of these things. And if not, you know who to talk to that can inform you about what's happening. Because a lot of times, like, I'll find myself talking to professors or to other journalism majors, and they have no clue, like, what's going on whatsoever at UT or in Austin. They don't know what's going on in the black or brown communities. They don't know, like, what's going on when it comes to political activism. And so I think that's where we have the advantage, where we have experience in those communities and we know what's happening, like, as soon as it happens, you know? So yeah, I think that's good.
Oh, that's good. I guess, can I ask you what you guys were organizing when you met? Like, what exactly was it that you guys were working on?
I think it was PSC work.
Yeah.
That's when I really got to know you.
Yes.
The Palestinian Solidarity Committee? Okay.
Yeah, so I've been involved in the Palestine Solidarity Committee for almost 2 years now. And I got involved in that after a trip to Israel, and we've been, like, organizing, like, awareness activities and just different campaigns. And through that, I became more informed about, like, you know, colonialism, like, anti-imperialism, like, a lot of, like, those schemes, like, anti-capitalism, and through that I also met a lot of different organizations that have, like, similar struggles, you know. So there was the USAS campaign, which I participated in the sit-in 2 years ago, and then there's also been, you know, anti-racism campaigns, which the Muslim community here like strongly identifies with too, and that has also been involved in Palestine. And then we also organized a conference last year on different strategies to pressure Israel to end the occupation in Palestine. And through that, like we started talking more, and yeah.
How are the reactions of like the communities, like whether it's the Muslim community or whether it's like the Black community? Because I know you did mention the APD interview and the collaboration that you guys have between both the mediums that you use. How does the community feel about your work, and have they expressed what have they expressed about it?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, it started off, like I said, with Radio Libre, and it was kind of, like people would know about it. A lot of people, like within our own communities, would tell us that they were listening, but it wasn't until like maybe a year ago, or even like, yeah, I would say like a year ago, it was that I got a lot of outreach. We got, like, as far as Radio Libre, it's like, hey, can I, go on your radio show so I could talk about this event, or talk about this issue, or talk about certain things. So I feel, and this is more like through people telling me, that they really want to utilize the outlets that we have as a space to tell their own stories, and see it as a way that it's reachable, that it's not like intangible, like all these, like Fox News, or even sometimes NPR, like here it's like I could just tap you, and it's like I could be on the airwaves or something. And then as far as like Mujeres and Medio goes, I mean, it's starting to flow as well, but the same thing, we've had other women of color who are in media work expressed interest in writing things, or wanted to do collaboration work, or wanting to talk about what it is, because some people, they just don't know. So I feel like we've gotten a lot of positivity from it, and a lot of good outreach. I feel like I've tried to connect with different people to get like criticisms on what we're doing, and there's been good, and kind of like, this is how you could grow. So I feel like it's been pretty positive for the most part.
Yeah, definitely. That's how I feel too. I mean, I haven't really participated in Radio Libre for that long, but I know that they have been doing like really good work, because even today I was asking somebody if I could interview them for the radio show tonight, and they're like, yeah, definitely, I listen into Radio Libre, and so it's something that they willingly want to participate in, because they understand like the politics behind it, and they understand that they can, like, what Itzel was saying, that it's accessible, and they can actually say what they want to say, like, unfiltered. And then through Mujeres en Medio, it's really interesting, because like I've interviewed like some people who I would have thought had a lot of exposure because, for example, when I was interviewing Jonathan, he's a screen printer at Coronado Studios, and I expected him to have been interviewed before, but he's like, I've never been interviewed before. Nobody's ever wanted to like know my story or anything, and he's also undocumented, and he has a really interesting story, and a lot of times we find like certain people that for some reason we assume that they would have had more exposure by now, but they haven't, and I feel like that's where we fit in to the community.
Yeah, and it's very much people that are reachable to us. We don't try to go like crazy and beyond. I mean, sometimes we do, but it's mostly like people that we already know. Again, with organizing as a background, it's like, oh, well, I know this person, I could talk to them, or I know this other person. I mean, with USAS, who are like Blu-ray, like she knows them. So it's people that we already kind of have connected with, that it's a lot easier for them to want to talk to us about these things, as opposed to kind of someone that I don't really know, and then I'm asking them all these personal questions, and they don't really want to talk about it, right? So it's very much a difference of like relationship, I would say, too.
Well, I don't know if you have any other questions for them, but you guys have been really, really great.
Awesome.
Do you have anything, Tracy?
Dang it.
Girl power to y'all, though. You guys are amazing.
Well, oh yeah. Well, if you all want to talk about more about any like, future like events that you want to share with people, and talk about like your like perspective things, that way like when you put it up, maybe people would be interested in coming out.
Okay.
You know, like whoever audience.
Yeah. So
is listening.
I guess right now we've done a couple of exhibits. And we did one in Houston at Dashi House, and then we did one. Well, we have a couple of photos up at Mexiarte right now. So those two were like our past events, and they went really well. We've done like some tabling, and we are currently doing changarito at Mexiarte, which is like a way of selling our art to like the public and in the street. But I guess moving forward, what we're really wanting to do is have more contributors. And we're always looking for them, whether they be in Austin or, you know, in another city. Because I feel like it's important to have different voices from different backgrounds and kind of also the stories being told from their communities, because we're telling the stories of the Austin community, but it's important to have like different niches in different places. So I guess contributors are what we really, really seek and want, and contributors that are willing to do skill sharing and also are, you know, wholeheartedly for social justice as well.
Yeah, like touching on that, I think sometimes people get mistaken by like the name Radio Libre and Mujeres en Medio and think that it's solely based on Latin America or it's only for Latin Americans, but really like we're looking for people of all backgrounds or women of all backgrounds, because we want to hear like all of the stories that affect all of us because they are so interrelated.
Yeah, and our website is mujeresenmedio.com.
Mujeresenmedio.com.
Yeah, thanks. Cool.
Are you zooming in? Stop,
Yes.
Tree.
It's like,
Tracy's out to get you guys.
you know,
This is so light.
collaboration. I feel like we touched on all of